Circulatory System Part 5 ICC Class 10 Topics and Revision. Dear children, today we are discussing about blood circulatory system. All of you know that in human beings there are different body fluids are there. They are blood, lymph and tissue fluid. Here we are discussing how blood will circulate throughout the body. What are the different structures present in the body to circulate blood? What are the organs present in the body to circulate blood? You already learned that in 8th standard. That is heart, arteries, veins and capillaries. Here you can see that heart, arteries, veins and capillaries. These are the different organs helping for the circulation of blood. First we can discuss about heart. Where is the location of heart? Heart is located right in the center between two lungs and above the diaphragm. This down portion, that is diaphragm, above the diaphragm between two lungs. That is the location of heart. It's very important. Then what is the size of heart? It is same as our closed fist. Then it has 12 centimeter length and 9 centimeter width. The double-walled membrane of the heart or the outer covering of the heart, we call it as pericardium. The term you have to know is very important. Pericardium is the double-walled membrane of the heart. Double-walled membrane of the heart, the outer covering, we call it as pericardium. Then what is the function of pericardium? Pericardium protects the heart. Then the fluid present in the pericardial membrane is pericardial fluid. Inside this pericardial membrane there is a fluid. That fluid we call it as pericardial fluid. What is the function of pericardial fluid? It reduces friction during the heartbeat. Then it protects it from mechanical injuries. Mainly two functions are there. First one, it reduces friction. First point reduces friction. The second point, it protects it from mechanical injuries. These are the main functions of pericardial fluid. This is also very important. You have to learn this. What is the function of pericardial fluid? It is the outer covering or double-walled membrane of the heart. Then what is the location of the heart? That is between two lungs, right in the center between two lungs and above the diaphragm. Chambers of the heart. Mainly there are 4 chambers present in the heart. They are 2 upper atria or auricles, 2 lower ventricles. Here you can see his 2 upper atria is left atrium and right atrium. Atrium is the singular form, atria is the plural. Then you can see here left ventricle and right ventricle. You can say how you will label the parts while drawing the diagrams or while is identifying the pictures. It's very important. Your right side. This is your right side, but in the diagram, your right side should be, yes, you have to label in left. The right side. This is your right side. Then that right side, what you have to label? You have to label left. Yes. Then your left side. This is your left side. In the diagram, what you have to label? Right. Then here, left atrium. Right side. Your right side is the left atrium. Then in your right side, that is left ventricle. You understood? Your left should be the right of the diagram. Your right should be the left of the diagram. That is very important while drawing. This is the common mistake everyone is doing. Your right side you have to label left. In your left side you have to label right. Understood? Then atria have thin walls. Atria have thin walls. You can see here, these are the two atria. This atria has thin walls. What is the reason of that? Give reason. Atria have thin walls. What you will write? Reason is its major function is to receive blood from the body and pump it into the very next ventricle. Yes, what is the main function of atrium? Its main function is receive blood from the body. Receive blood from the body. You can see here left atrium also receive blood, then right atrium also receive blood from the body. That's why it is receiving. That point you have to remember, receiving blood. Then what is the another point? Pump it into very next ventricle. It's only pump. What is the function? It will pump blood into very next ventricle. This is next to this atrium. Then very near. It pump blood into very near or very next to the ventricle. That's why atria have thin walls. You can see here, yes, atrium only, what is the main function? It will collect blood. It will collect blood. That is the main function of atrium. And one more point you have to remember, left atrium and left side. Left side is pump what type of blood? Left side of the heart pump oxygenated blood and right side of the heart pump deoxygenated blood. Left side of the heart pump oxygenated blood and right side of the heart pump deoxygenated blood. Don't forget that how to write left and right. In the diagram always what we are saying, that is actually based on the diagram. That means this left atrium and left ventricle is pumping which type of blood? Oxygenated blood. Right atrium and right ventricle are pumping what type of blood? It will pump deoxygenated blood. Then the next one, ventricles have thick muscular walls. What is the reason for ventricles have thick muscular walls? You know that ventricles have thick muscular walls. Here you can see. Yes, what is the reason? They have to pump blood to long distance. These ventricles, the main function of ventricle, that will pump blood to long distance. Ventricles will pump blood to long distance. That's why ventricles have thick muscular wall. Yes. Then the next one, left ventricle pump oxygenated blood. Yes, of course, we already learned that left ventricle pump oxygenated blood. Then right ventricle pump deoxygenated blood. This is very important. Then one more thing, right atrium will collect blood. What type of blood it will collect? It will collect deoxygenated blood. Left atrium also collect blood. What type of blood will collect? Oxygenated blood. Yes. The next one, left ventricle is thicker than right ventricle. Why the left ventricle is thicker than right ventricle? You can see in this diagram, left side, left ventricle is thicker. than right ventricle. Why? The left ventricle pumps blood the farthest point in the body, because the left ventricle pumps blood to the farthest point in the body from the his head till the toe, right? That's why we can say left ventricle pump blood to the farthest point in the body, but right ventricle pump blood only up to the lungs. Right ventricle will pump blood to only up to the lungs for oxygenation. That's why compared to right and left ventricle is thicker and right ventricle is thinner. Then what is the reason? Left ventricle pump blood the farthest point in the body. Then the right ventricle pump blood only up to the lungs. That's why left ventricle is thicker than right ventricle. Then what are the other point you have to remember? Left side carries oxygenated blood, right side carries deoxygenated blood. Then auricle collect blood. Auricle collect blood from the body, and ventricle, what ventricle will do? Ventricle pump blood. Ventricle pump blood. That's why that is thicker than auricle. Auricle only collecting blood. Then it will pump only next to that auricle, that is still ventricle. That's all. But the main function is collecting blood. It will collect blood from different blood vessels that we will discuss later. Now you understood what are the different chambers present in the heart. Once again, there are mainly 4 chambers are there. 2 upper atria, that is left atrium and right atrium. Then 2 ventricles, lower ventricles, left ventricle and right ventricle. Then the reasons also you have to remember. Blood vessels entering the heart. Anterior or superior vena cava and posterior or inferior vena cava and pulmonary veins. These are the different types of blood vessels entering the heart. First we can discuss about anterior or superior vena cava and posterior or inferior vena cava. What is anterior or superior vena cava? It is located on the upper side of the heart. What is the function of it? It carries deoxygenated blood from upper side of the body to the right atrium. Then what is the function of posterior or inferior vena cava? It is located on the lower side of the heart. Lower side. Then what is the function? It carries again deoxygenated blood, because all veins carries deoxygenated blood except pulmonary veins. Then this posterior or inferior vena cava carries deoxygenated blood from lower part of the body to the right atrium. Then very important point you have to remember, all the veins carries deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. Then what is pulmonary vein? Pulmonary vein is connected to lungs. Pulmonary means it's connected to lungs, right? Yes. It carries what? It carries, this is the only vein carries what type of blood? Carries oxygenated blood. Then pulmonary veins, these are pulmonary veins. These pulmonary veins carries oxygenated blood from lungs to the left atrium. Yes, it carries oxygenated blood from lungs to the left atrium. Blood vessels leaving the heart. Mainly 3 types of blood vessels leaving the heart. First one, pulmonary artery. You can see in this picture, pulmonary artery. This is pulmonary artery. What is the function of this pulmonary artery? It carries What type of blood? Deoxygenated blood. From where? From right ventricle to the lungs. Because the name itself, we know that pulmonary, it's related to lungs. Then it carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle of the heart to the lungs. Then next blood vessel leaving the heart, that is aorta. You can see in this picture, this is aorta, right? Yes. What is the function of aorta? Aorta carries what type of blood? It carries oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood from left ventricle of the heart to the different parts of the body. Aorta carries oxygenated blood from left ventricle of the heart to the different parts of the body. It is the function of aorta. Then the other blood vessel, that is coronary artery. Coronary artery, where it is located? This is coronary artery. Yes. Then this coronary artery is located the base of the aorta, at the base of the aorta. This is the location. It's very important. What is the location of coronary artery? This at the base of the aorta. Then what is the function? It supplies oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood to the heart muscles. It supplies oxygenated blood to the heart muscles. You have to remember a very important point, that is all the arteries. Aorta is also the largest artery. You know that. Already learned that aorta is the largest artery. Then all the arteries carries what type of blood? Oxygenated blood. All the arteries carries oxygenated blood, but there is an exception, that is pulmonary artery. Only pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. That all arteries carries what type of blood? Oxygenated blood. Then we can say all the arteries carries oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. Myocardial infarction or heart attack. The technical term of heart attack, that is myocardial infarction. When there is blockage in the coronary artery, there is deadening of the corresponding area of the heart muscles. Here you can see. Then when there is a blockage in the coronary artery, deadening of the corresponding area of the heart muscles, then that we call it as heart attack. Then technical term. What is the technical term of heart attack? That is myocardial infarction. The next term, that is angina pectoris. What is angina pectoris? Very important. Chest pain due to insufficient supply of blood to the heart muscles. Here the chest pain is happening due to the insufficient supply of blood to the heart muscles, that we call it as angina pectoris. Then there should be a blockage. Blockage should be there. Very less amount of blood will enter into the heart muscles. There is insufficient supply of blood to the heart muscles. That is because of that, what will happen? Chest pain. Chest pain will occur. That the chest pain due to insufficient supply of blood to the heart muscles, that we call it as angina pectoris. Heart valves. Mainly there are 4 types of valves are there in the heart. Right atrioventricular valve. This is right atrioventricular valve. Left atrioventricular valve. This one. Pulmonary semilunar valve and Iotic semilunar valve. These are the 4 types of valves present in the heart. Right atrioventricular valve, left atrioventricular valve, pulmonary semilunar valve and Iotic semilunar valve. We will study that in detail. Then, what is valve? What are the functions of valves? Mainly, valves regulate the flow of blood in a single direction. Valves regulate the flow of blood in a single direction. Then in another way we can say it will prevent the backflow of blood. It will prevent the backflow of blood. First we can discuss about right atrioventricular valve or tricuspid valve. What is that? Right atrioventricular valve. That means right side. Of course, that should be in the right side of the heart. Then, where it is located? Between atria and ventricles. It is located between the atria and ventricles. That's why we call it as right atrioventricular valve. You can see here, this is the right side of the heart. Here, between the atrium and ventricles, that we can say is a valve is present. That valve we call it as right atrioventricular valve. Then the other term, the other name of right atrioventricular valve, that is tricuspid valve. Very important, tricuspid valve. Tricuspid valve, where it is located? The location of tricuspid valve. It is located at the aperture between the right auricle and right ventricle. Between the right auricle and right ventricle. That is the location of tricuspid valve. Then, what is the structure of this tricuspid valve? It has three triangular flap. You can see in this diagram, three triangular flap-like structures or cusps. These flap-like structures we call it as cusps. So, it is also called tricuspid valve. This right atrioventricular valve has cusps. That's why we call it as, that is tricuspid valve, because of the cusps. How many cusps are there? Yes, three cusps. And it has three triangular flap-like structures are there, that we call it as cusps. That's why that is also known as, this right atrioventricular valve is also known as tricuspid valve. Then the next point, the apices of the tricuspid valve held in position. Yes, you can see the upper side of the tricuspid valve held in position by tendinous cords. These we call it as tendinous cords. These tendinous cords we call it as chordate tendineae. Then what is the function of this chordate tendineae? It holds the apices of tricuspid valve. Hold is apices of tricuspid valve in position. Then these cords we call it as chordate tendineae. Then the other term, that is papillary muscles. What is papillary muscles? Chordate tendineae arising from, you can see in this diagram, chordate tendineae arising from the muscular projections. Chordate tendineae arising from the muscular projections of the ventricle wall, known as papillary muscles. Then these chordate tendineae is arising from what? Muscular projections. Where is that muscular projections? That is of the ventricle wall. From the ventricle wall, a muscular projections will arise to hold the, or is it will carry that papillary muscles. The main function is of the papillary muscles that will attach the chordate tendineae. Why this chordate tendineae is there? Chordate tendineae helps to hold the tricuspid valve in position. Then this chordate tendineae attaches the, where it is attaches? It attaches the muscular projections of the ventricle wall. These muscular projections we call it as papillary muscles. Next is left atrioventricular valve. Left atrioventricular valve is also known as bicuspid valve. What is the meaning? The two cusps are there. Here you can see this is one cusp, this is another cusp. Then two cusps are there. That's why that is called bicuspid valve. Two flap-like structures. That's why that is called bicuspid valve. The another term, one more term is there in left atrioventricular valve. That is mitral valve. Mitral valve. Then bicuspid valve also known as mitral valve. Here is the location. It is located at the aperture between the left auricle and left ventricle. It is located between left auricle and left ventricle. Then the same as tricuspid valve, the caudate tendineae, the function is same. Then papillary muscles also the same. Caudate tendineae and papillary muscles also present in the left ventricle. Caudate tendineae, it will hold the apices of the flaps of the bicuspid and tricuspid valve held in position. That we already learned in the previous slide. Then papillary muscles. Papillary muscles, what is the function? It holds caudate tendineae. It will attach the caudate tendineae. Then from where it will arise? This caudate tendineae arise from papillary muscles. Next type of valve, that is pulmonary semilunar valve. Here you can see pulmonary semilunar valve. Where is the location? It is located the opening of the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery. Opening of the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery. You can see here. Yes, this is pulmonary semilunar valves. Then that is present on the right side, right ventricle. Then opening of the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery. Then these are pocket shaped and 3 in number. You can see in this picture, these pulmonary semilunar valves are pocket shaped and 3 in number. Then what about Iotic semilunar valve? That is another type of valve. Iotic semilunar valve. Where is the location? It is located at the point of origin of the aorta from the left ventricle. Here you can see. Yes, point of origin of the aorta. Here, this is aorta. This point of origin of the aorta from the left ventricle. This is left ventricle. Then point of origin of aorta from the left ventricle. That is the location of Iotic semilunar valve. You can see here in this picture. Here again, these are also 3 in number, right? 3 in number and pocket shaped. This is all about different types of valves present in the heart. 2 main phases of heartbeat, that is ventricular systole and atrial diastole. Other one, atrial systole and ventricular diastole. Systole means contracting stage, diastole means relaxing stage. At the time of ventricular systole, ventricle will contract. The same time, atria will relax. That's called atrial diastole. The other stage, that is atrial systole. Atria will contract. The same time, ventricle will be in relaxed stage, that we call it as ventricular diastole. We are discussing about the working of heart, how it is happening. All of you know that in the heartbeat there are 2 main phases are there, that is atrial systole and ventricular diastole, and other phase ventricular systole and atrial diastole. This atrial systole and ventricular diastole happens at the same time. Then how it happens? First point, Semilunar valves are closed to prevent the backflow of blood from pulmonary artery and aorta into the ventricle and produce dub sound. What is the meaning of that? At the time of atrial systole means atria will contract. Here you can see at the time of atrial systole, the blood from the atria is entering into the ventricle. Will enter into the ventricle. Then at the time of atrial systole, the same time ventricle is in diastolic stage. Because of the relaxing stage of diastole, yes, there is a chance of blood coming from pulmonary artery and aorta to the ventricle. That's why these pulmonary semilunar valves present on the opening of pulmonary artery and aortic semilunar valve present on the opening of aorta, these valves will close because there is a chance of coming back of blood to the ventricle because ventricle is in diastolic stage. That's why these valves are closed. This closing sound, we call it as dub sound. This is dub sound is producing in which stage? Question may come. Dub sound is due to atrial systole and ventricular diastole. They will ask either atrial systole or ventricular diastole. Then dub sound is due to ventricular diastole. You can say, or that is atrial systole. Then the other point, the same time, what will happen? Tricuspid and bicuspid valve will open because this at the time of atrial systole, blood will enter into the ventricle. From the auricle, blood will enter into ventricle by the opening of tricuspid and bicuspid valve. Here you can see tricuspid valve in the right side of the heart, bicuspid valve in the left side of the heart. Let's say these two valves will open at the time of ventricular diastole and atrial systole. Then the next one, ventricular systole and atrial diastole. What is that? Atrial diastole means atria will relax. This is another stage. Then at the time of ventricular systole, after ventricular diastole, the next stage is ventricle will contract. Then that we call it as ventricular systole. Ventricle will contract. Then blood present in the ventricle that will enter into his pulmonary artery and aorta. From the right side of the heart, right ventricle, it will enter into pulmonary artery. The left side, left ventricle, it will enter into aorta. Then here what is happening? Here is one valve will close. One type of valve will close, that is tricuspid and bicuspid valve will close. Then that why this will close? To prevent the backflow of blood from ventricle to auricle. That's why this closing of this bicuspid and tricuspid valve, we call it as, then there is a sound produced because of the closing of tricuspid and bicuspid valve. That sound we call it as lap sound. This is due to closing of tricuspid and bicuspid valve. Lap sound is due to closing of tricuspid and bicuspid valve. Then dub sound is due to closing of semilunar valves, pulmonary semilunar valves and aortic semilunar valves. Then semilunar valves will open at the time of ventricular systole. At the time of ventricular systole, semilunar valves are open and blood passes from ventricle to pulmonary artery and aorta. Then, the same time, what is happening here? Ventricle will be in systolic stage, then atria will be in diastolic stage. Atria will be in diastolic stage or relaxed stage. Atria draw blood from is pulmonary vein and vena cava. The right side, right atria draw blood from vena cavas, superior and inferior vena cavas. Then left side, left atria draw blood from pulmonary veins. Then this is due to why it is drawing, because this auricle is in atria will be in this diastolic stage, relaxed stage. Smaller the size, the faster the heart rate. Why? In small animals, the heart rate or heartbeat rate will be more. In infants, you can see infants also compared to adult human beings, that heartbeat rate is more. Why it is like this? Because smaller the animals, the more it loses its body heat. When the animals are small, yes, is very fastly body heat will be loses from their body due to the higher surface volume ratio. Due to higher surface volume ratio, these animals, smaller animals, loses its body heat very fastly. That's why smaller the size, the faster the heart rate. The next one, cardiac cycle. Mainly there are three phases are there in cardiac cycle. What is cardiac cycle? The whole sequence of events in the heartbeat is called cardiac cycle. The whole sequence of events in the heartbeat is called cardiac cycle. Mainly there are three main stages are there in cardiac cycle. First one, atrial and ventricular diastole. Both atria and ventricles are in relaxed stage. That we call it as atria and ventricular diastole. Then the next stage is atrial systole and ventricular diastole. This atrial and ventricular diastole is in 0.40 seconds. 0.40 seconds. Then atrial systole and ventricular diastole. That's the another stage. Atrial systole means atria will contract. Atria will contract and ventricle will be in relaxed stage. Then that is 0.15 seconds. 0.15 seconds. Atrial systole and ventricular diastole. Then which sound will produce? Duck sound is producing because of the closing of semilunar valves. Then the another stage, that is ventricular systole. Ventricular systole and atrial diastole, that is 0.30 seconds. Here is ventricular systole. At the time of ventricular systole, is which valve will close? Yes, tricuspid and bicuspid valve will close. Then the blood will enter into the pulmonary artery and aorta. That time this tricuspid and bicuspid valve will close. That's why which sound will produce? That is lup sound. Lup sound is due to ventricular systole. Then that is happening 0.30 seconds. 0.30 seconds this ventricular systole is happening. Then these all sequence of events in the heartbeat is called cardiac cycle. Pacemaker, sinoatrial node or SAN. The full form of SAN is sinoatrial node. The impulse or command which starts the heartbeat arises in the pacemaker. The impulse or command starts the heartbeat arises in the pacemaker. Where it is located? This is pacemaker. Where it is located? It is located in the walls of the right auricle and present near the opening of superior vena cava. Then avian node. Avian node is another structure that is located near the interauricular septum, near the tricuspid valve. Then this pacemaker send impulses to avian node. Then from the avian node, these impulses will collect, bundle of muscles will collect these impulses. This bundle of muscles begin from avian and extends to the interventricular septum. These muscles, bundle of muscle fibers, we call it as bundle of Icse. Then it will collect impulse from avian and extends to the interventricular septum. Then this bundle of Icse consists of branches. These branches of fibers. These branches of fibers running along the walls of the ventricle. It is running along the walls of the ventricle. That branches we call it as Purkinje fibers. That branches we call it as Purkinje fibers. Then there are different structures are there to receive impulses, to pass impulses from pacemaker to the walls of the ventricle. That is, pacemaker is sending the impulse. Pacemaker sending the impulse to start heartbeat. Then who will receive that? Avian. Avian receive that impulse. Then from the avian, this bundle of fibers is present in the interventricular septum. This impulse will pass through this bundle of fibers. This bundle of fibers we call it as bundle of Icse. Then this bundle of Icse has branches that consist of branches of fibers that is running along the walls of the ventricle. Walls of the ventricle. That branches we call it as Purkinje fibers. Revision, exam based questions and answers. Write the location of the following. First one, tricuspid valve. It is located between the right auricle and right ventricle. Mitral valve. Another name is bicuspid valve. It is located between right auricle and right ventricle. Pulmonary semilunar valve. It is located, where it is located? Pulmonary semilunar valve. It is located at the opening of pulmonary artery. Iotic semilunar valve. It is located at the opening of aorta. Then caudate tendineae. Caudate tendineae is located in the ventricle, right and left ventricle. Coronary artery. Coronary artery is located at the base of the aorta. Heart. Where it is located? Heart is located center between two lungs, between the two lungs, above the diaphragm. SAN. Sinoatrial node. Where it is located? It is located in the walls of right auricle near the opening of superior vena cava. It is located the walls of right auricle located near the opening of superior vena cava. Avian. Where it is located? It is located near the interauricular septum, near the tricuspid valve. Write the functions of the following. First one, papillary muscles. Papillary muscles holds the caudate tendineae. This caudate tendineae arise from papillary muscles. Then, what is the function of caudate tendineae? It holds tricuspid and bicuspid valve in position at the time of ventricular systole. Coronary artery. Coronary artery carries oxygenated blood from heart to heart muscles. Tricuspid valve. Tricuspid valve helps to prevent the backflow of blood from right ventricle to right auricle during ventricular systole. Bicuspid valve helps to prevent the backflow of blood from left ventricle to left auricle during ventricular systole. Pulmonary semilunar valve. Pulmonary semilunar valve helps to prevent the backflow of blood from pulmonary artery to the right ventricle during ventricular diastole. Iotic semilunar valve. Iotic semilunar valve prevent the backflow of blood from aorta to the left ventricle during ventricular diastole. Pericardial fluid. Pericardial fluid, mainly two functions are there. It reduces the friction and it protects the heart from injury. Then the next one, aorta. What is the function of aorta? Aorta carries oxygenated blood from which part of the heart? From left ventricle to the different parts of the body. Pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from lungs to left auricle. Pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery is the artery that only carries deoxygenated blood. Only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Then what is the function? Pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from right ventricle to the lungs. Because pulmonary, that means lungs. Related to lungs. Anterior and posterior vena cava. Anterior and posterior vena cava is collect blood. It carries blood from what type of blood? Deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body to right auricle. Then what is SAN? SAN, what is the function? SAN send impulse to start the heartbeat. Send impulse or command to start heartbeat. Name the following. Double membrane covering of the heart. Double membrane covering of the heart, that is pericardium. The sound produced during ventricular systole. Which sound is produced during ventricular systole? Ventricular systole, that is lup sound. The sound produced during ventricular diastole, that is dup sound. The valve present between the left atrium and left ventricle, that is mitral valve or bicuspid valve. The tendinous cords hold the atrioventricular valve during ventricular systole. Tendinous cords hold the atrioventricular valve during ventricular systole, that is caudate tendineae. The contraction and expansion phase of the heart. Contraction phase we call it as systole. Expansion phase is diastole. You have to write like that: contraction, put a hyphen, systole. Expansion, put a hyphen, diastole. Thank you, children. Have a good day. Like, share and subscribe.